Okay, so let's get into it. We are going to be talking about podcasting. Victoria has to leave right on time today. So, is there anything that you want her to walk you through? I know there's been a lot of changes over the past couple of days, even. There's been a lot of changes in Bodygraph chart. Is there anything that you want her brain on before we break out into talking about podcasting? I didn't know she was going to be here. So, this is kind of a bonus for us that we get her brain here.
I do.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Um, I'm curious. I've kind of been back and forth with Victoria on the reading reports, and I'm just really curious what it looks like. I'm using the website, the business website. What does it look like when somebody checks out? Like if I have two freebies on there and they click it, for some reason it pops up like the chart, like add to cart. Is it like an automatic download? Is it something that they get emailed? What
Mm,
should it look like?
Okay, so the sequence of the events is that if you have a product, so to begin with, the chart on the business website does not have instant download button as the integration has. So that means that all the products, free or paid, at the business website goes through the checkout. So, and when you click the button add to the checkout, you still need to provide the birth details for the PDF to generate. That goes into the checkout. Then you provide the address, you're filling the checkout details. Even if it's free, the checkout still requires to provide the details. And then the thank you message pops up. And then the email from WooCommerce is sent with the link to the report or the freebie to the customer's emails. So that's the sequence of the events from the business website.
Thank you. I think we've got that. I had that clear thing that was popping up,
Yeah.
which is fixed, but then
Yeah.
I did like a little trial and I was hitting like add to cart but it wasn't going anywhere. So maybe
Okay.
it might be my error. I'm not
So
sure. I sent you a recording.
yeah, send me, yes, send me again a message, and I will just log into your account and check. So yeah, what's
Okay.
going on behind the scenes, okay?
Okay. Thank you for that. That was
You're
very
most welcome.
helpful.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, Amy.
Before we used to have the marketplace, and I know that they moved reports and now some are paid and some are free, which by the way, you really needed to charge for some of those, so thank you. Um, but there used to be more fields, like all of the color tone and base in addition to like what's already included in there. How do can we get those again or
So marketplace is discontinued for everyone. The reason being why, because we actually released the languages in my content tool, reports in the reading reports tool, simply because marketplace was hard to find for some reason for our customers. So we're actually leaving the templates within the tools right now rather than keeping them at the marketplace. So you will find, for example, we have at the marketplace report templates. They are right now under the reading reports tool listed, right? The languages as well. We have the languages at the marketplace to install extra languages. But right now, whenever someone subscribes, all the languages already presented at my content tool by default. With the designs as well, when someone subscribes, the designs are presented at the My Chart design tool. So I doubt that we're going to be bringing marketplace unless we have an idea in the future to actually release the marketplace to use for our customers as well, to sell your templates through the marketplace and have that some sort of exchange, so you could gain extra revenue from, for example, selling the ready-made reports for other readers to use in their business. So we have that idea, but we definitely have no any estimated time, right? It's just on the idea.
but you You used to be able to add like the set of melancholy gates so that
Oh,
we
you
can
mean the
our
custom
source code.
properties?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are currently not available, the ready-made custom properties. We will introduce them probably either at my content tool or as a list under the custom properties where you will be able to click it and install it. Right now, if you have anything specific in mind that you want to pull it, just drop me a message at
Okay.
support@bodygraphchat.com. I will send you a file which you can just import into custom property,
Okay. Thank
and then
you.
that's it. Yeah, you're most welcome.
Carrie,
Someone raised their hand
yeah,
before, and
Carrie, did
yeah,
you change your mind?
Oh, that was me. I think you kind of answered it, Victoria, because I was going to pick up on Amy's question because I noticed that the marketplace was gone and that
yeah,
some of the templates are, they're just you have to fill in your own language. And so I was actually looking for the other templates to utilize. So
yeah.
maybe I'll pop a question in the community and see if anyone has some that they're
Just
promoting.
Yeah, just drop me a message at the support@bodygraphchat.com, or sorry, yeah, or just a live message, and maybe I can just import the template, whichever is missing, or
Okay,
maybe you missed opportunity to install. I will get that on your account.
super. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Anybody else have something for Victoria? Going
Okay,
once,
seems like the
going
stage is
twice.
yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk podcasting. Who has a podcast? Who's here that has a podcast? Kind of. So what comes up for you around podcasting? Start me off with some things that are coming up for you. I have stuff that we can talk about too, but I just want to make sure that I answer or that we talk about what is going on for you.
Well, since I did the I wanted to do a formal podcast. What I've done to get started, because I've got a defined root chakra, not root chakra. I've got a defined root, and an open sacral. So, and there's lots of anyway. So I got started by just starting to do lives on LinkedIn, and I record them and put them up on my YouTube channel. And then I've eventually put that playlist in a quote podcast on
Mhm.
YouTube. So it's not on Apple or anything, but I still call it a podcast. So, but part of the what comes up for me whenever I think about it is the amount of work that goes into doing all the setup and the launch of the formal podcast, and then the ongoing work in staying consistent.
Mhm. Okay. I'm just going to make myself notes so we make sure that we cover everything. Okay. And Darcy is saying you'd like to have a podcast. And Stacy, have you guys thought of topics for a podcast? What have you got, Darcy? Oops, sorry, AJ, I'll come to you next.
All right, so I'm really wanting to do just even kind of for my business codependency and human design and being able to use human design to kind of overcome codependency. And so I kind of have been playing around with some ideas with that. And right now, what I'm going with is the quest to unbecoming, rising from the ashes of codependency with human design.
Okay.
That's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I like the concept. I like the niche, nice and tight. You know me, I like me a nice tight niche, but it's so much easier to create content. People think it's going to be the opposite, but yeah, it's so much easier to create content when you have a tight niche. So we'll definitely talk about that, and titles we'll talk about as well. So thank you for that. AJ, come ahead out, and somebody I just saw, oh, Amy, can't find the hand raising thing. You don't need the hand raising thing with me. You can just like come out, just talk. AJ, what's up with you? Podcasting.
So I've had a couple different podcasts in the past. over the years. I've had it up on Apple, I've had video, I've had it on YouTube. And so now my thing is that if I have the opportunity to edit something, I will edit it to perfection. And I found that that's like a huge waste of time for me as well. So I have decided to call my podcast a talk show now, and I'm hosting it live on Instagram. So it's
Cool.
also growing my Instagram, because then I have the guest also, I collaborate with them on the video, so that the post is on their wall as well, on their account. So I'm getting more followers on Instagram, and I'm finding that more people are actually listening and watching because it's on Instagram rather than it being somewhere on YouTube, or I have to send people links or whatever. It's like already on there, right? And I'm also getting the people, following me from the guest, and, it's just really helping. And so my focus too is, I'm calling it the illuminated shadow. And so we're talking, because I work with people who are like here to do big things, but they're stuck somehow, and they're like stuck in these limiting beliefs, right? And so I really help them to like see who they came here to be, and also their life's purpose, right? And so it's really cool to get on live with people and just talk for an hour, and we look at their chart, and we talk about things, and then they have questions, and it's like really cool, because people are getting to see me doing the work, right? And see like what it's like to work with me, but they're also getting tons of information, they're learning, and then they're also like, whoa, like I see that in my chart too, because I also send them, go get your chart. So I'm also getting them to sign up for my email list. So it's like all of these things, like I feel like I've really like found the perfect thing for me. But the problem that I have is that when it's done, like, how can I get more people to come and look at it? Like, I'm sending the link, I'm embedding the thing from Instagram onto my blog, right? And then sending like that link to people on my email list, because I have an email list. But I'm thinking, like, I would love to hear more ideas on how to get people interested in coming to listen and watch, to an hour-long episode. It's like, so that's where I'm kind of stuck, and feeling like hopefully you have some answers for me today.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to jump right into that one right now while we're fresh, because it's like really in response to that. So I think you have to look at the way the platform, like each platform has its own thing, right? I love what you're doing. I love that you're calling it a talk show. That's absolutely amazing. You're doing dramatic demonstrations for people that they get to see you. There is a certain percentage of the population who is never going to sit for an hour and watch an Instagram video, especially because you can't put subtitles on lives. So they're gonna at some point click off. So what I would be doing is that I would be repurposing that as a podcast episode as well, and getting them in both places. And you can even say that this is a live talk show recording. It's not edited. You can put, I don't know if you what tools you use, but I'm sure there's more than this. The one that I use is Descript, and you can put studio sound on it. So it actually sounds like you're in a studio. Like even my dog barks and it doesn't show in the recording. So there's lots of tools like that that you can use that are really low price. I think they even have a free version. But yeah.
What was that called again?
Descript. I'll put in the chat. It's the free version, I think, is something like I'm Gittes in the chat, is something like 300 minutes or something a month, I think. But the paid version is like $15 a month. So and also you edit, if you want to edit, you edit it by text. So you can take out your ums and your ahs and your spaces and all of those things if you want to, or if you have a guest on that's like super rambly, you can cut something out of there if you want to. The rule of thumb for editing, so I'm going to give you a resource too, and I may not spell it properly, Adam Shively. He is Podcasting Business School. I'm not sure if that's right or not, Shively, but he's everywhere on Instagram. And his rule of thumb for editing is that you can't take longer to edit the podcast than it took to record the podcast. So if he has a 15-minute episode, he doesn't spend more than 15 minutes editing, and makes it really easy into Descript or some other AI type tool where you can edit the text instead of the graphy thing at the bottom. I hate that graphy thing at the bottom. But that's what I would consider doing, is also getting it onto a podcast player so that you're hitting both things. Yeah. Does anybody else have some stuff for AJ about getting more people to see it on Instagram or anything else around that? Look at Joni like a wildfire woman here in the comments giving you the link to Adam's Instagram. That's so cool.
What about doing mini like clips from that 1 hour and just showing them on Instagram and saying, "Hey, we talked about X, Y, and Z. Here's a clip where, Vicky said da da da, or
Yeah.
Vicky told us about blah blah." And then that I think that would get more viewers too.
Yeah, definitely doing that. I'm only on my second episode. But I just know that like before my podcast, I have like 100 episodes from before. So I have a lot of experience with podcasting, but the editing, like I do not want to edit. I just don't. I don't want to do it. I get caught up in it. And then it's like, it just needs to be that and done. And that's kind of why Instagram is so great because I can't edit it. It's just done. So I am going to go in and take little like clips out, like you said. And I think that is like I think that's going to be a game changer right there. So people can participate and get some knowledge without having to watch the whole episode.
Yeah. And also I'm a big believer that the thing that you should be delegating is editing your podcast. Like I pay $10 flat fee for each podcast episode, which is kind of high. Like I have friends who pay $5 or whatever. There are tons of people in other countries where the cost of living is lower who will edit your podcast. There's no way you need to be doing that. There's no way you need to be spending, like you can record another podcast in the amount of time it takes for someone else to be able to edit it, right? Which is probably a better use of your time. So that's something to kind of think about too. Especially if you know you're going to fiddle and fart around with it, right? Yeah. I think it was Amy that you said that you couldn't find the hand thing. Did you have something? I'm just going to watch the chat.
I aspire to have a podcast because I do better winging it and just blabbing, but I'm afraid of sticking to a schedule. Like, like generator part of me wants to just do it when I feel like it and not commit to like launching something. I know I can read like front load the recordings and then release them. But if you have any other, like if you're going to cover any tidbits on getting over those hurdles of like commitment, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. Okay. So I never, ever, ever wanted to have a podcast. I had no desire whatsoever. And here I am. I will have done 98 episodes in a year on my own podcast. And here we are with the Pulse with a second one. I'm like, what is even happening here? Because I'm a quad right. I'm a manifesting generator. I'm crazy. Like I was so afraid of having to be stuck in something consistently. But I also like as a generator type, you have content coming out the yin yang. Like you have so many things that you're able to respond to that and it's really easy. What I love about podcasting is it could be 4 a.m. and I'm in my house coat and I'm recording a podcast episode because it's like, oh, that just came up, or somebody messaged me something overnight or something like that. So you have more content than you think you do. And yeah, you can schedule it out. It's really easy to schedule them out. I think maybe taking the pressure off that everything has to be a big thing as well. Like I listened to this guy. He's a business coach. It drives me crazy. Anyway, there's judgment. He has done a lot of testing and he knows that his ideal listener, the people who listen to his podcast, listen for exactly 22 minutes and some seconds. How long do you think his podcast is? You might have seen me post this on Instagram.
I'm just going to say 20 minutes is my guess.
An hour and 10 minutes, I think it is. It's like right around. And I'm like, you're a business coach? Like, what? Like, it makes no sense. So sometimes like Giddis was really adamant about his podcast that he wants them to be like 10-minute like sound bites, because then people can binge them. People can come in, they can get a bite of wisdom, something like that. So you probably have a lot more episodes in you than you think. I mean, I used to think I had to be Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss if I was going to be, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't talk to anybody for 3 hours. What am I going to do? Like, I can't even talk to my husband for 3 hours. I've been married to him for 32 years. So how am I going to do that on a podcast? But it can be like little wee things. And somebody said here, Marla said she does things on Facebook Live for 90 minutes and then chops them into 10 or 20 minutes. So there's lots of different ways to repurpose into, and I would just say, like, trust your response. If you're really feeling called to podcasting, trust that you'll have enough to be in response to that you can schedule out. You know, start with once a week and just see where it goes with you.
Now, is there a tool that will put it on all the places? Like, that's when I go to the technical psychosis of like, I need to know all the details before I start anything.
Well, thank God you came to the tech girl here for that. Yeah, I use Captivate we use that for the Pulse and for mine. You can have as many podcasts as you want on Captivate. I don't know about the other podcast players. You can look them up. I'm sure that Google will tell you lots of them. I think I pay 200 and something a year. And you can have as many podcasts as you want. So I also have a podcast for my grandchildren where I read storybooks and they can listen to it at night. And then I interview them every once in a while, just to kind of, the two older ones, just to kind of, it's always there, right? So yeah, it's a good one, and it pushes it out to all of the players.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can schedule. Simona?
I just wanted to share an idea I just got while AJ was talking about how to get more clients and all of that. So I got this idea. I don't really know how the podcast works, but I think that maybe, I don't know if you do it already or not, that would be an idea. Just so like schedule a meeting with your clients for a certain theme and talk about it at like live video recording. And in the meantime, your clients can get involved through the live chat, like asking questions, and you can look in those questions and answer them like straightly, like talking one-on-one. Or like also you can do this kind of setting of discussion to collaborate with more of your field specialists, like 3-4 people, I don't know how many you want, and also choose some certain themes you want to talk, and also through live chat to involve your customers to ask questions, to be proactive, and just like that involved. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Just got, yeah.
Because that sounds very much like a talk show, right? When you can engage your listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I come from IT sphere, so that kind of stuff, even for IT peoples to talk about like mental health or your spiritual health or something like that is very interesting, and we all like, oh, let's go do it, let's just watch it. and we get all those like in the LinkedIn, like for IT people, LinkedIn is like Facebook. So if you want to attract a new kind of, set of people, you can go there. And it's just like, it's really interesting because this is now a period when everyone is very concerned about the mental health, about their spirituality, but all those things. And to get more information is always like appreciated so much. So yep. and also asking questions live is just such a great thing, because you watch the video and you get in your head thousands of questions and there is no way for anyone to answer them. And when it's live, you can just write it and someone just like read it and answer it, and you're just like, oh, amazing, got my information. Great.
Yeah.
That.
Thank you. That's something important that Simona brings up, because it can feel very much when you're on this side of the mic and you're talking, like, I like to have things to respond to, right? And so I'm always talking with my hands, and I'm always talking to my listeners and saying, oh, I forgot that you can't see me. I'm talking with my hands, or I'm asking them to raise their hand. I'm picturing them, walking their dog in the park and they're raising their hand as I'm talking to them. So SpeakPipe is a really neat tool. It's a free version you can use, and people can send you audio versions. So you guys can all send questions into the Pulse. through SpeakPipe. It's just an audio question, and then you can play it on your podcast for people. So it gives your listeners a way to kind of be involved with you and to feel like they're part of the process. Amy's eyes are just popping like crazy. Yes, people can talk to me. Yeah, it makes you feel like you're not so alone, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to answer this question in the chat, and I'm going to read it aloud for the replay. My question is, what platform do you recommend? So I use Captivate. You can look up podcast players. I'm sure there's tons of them, but that's the one that I use. I've been talking about hosting a podcast for more than a year. Yep, people do that. What holds me back is my lack of technical skills. I would like to do video, but I'm open to just audio. What's a foolproof tool podcast? And what do I need in terms of mics and all? Okay. So I am, Carla, I'm the least tech person on the planet, I think. And I managed to have podcasts. So I'm sure that you'll be fine. If I can do it, you can do it. It's super, super easy. The first thing that I would be doing is hiring an editor, because they're super affordable. And I don't think that that's a good use of almost anyone's time who can't do it like really, really quickly like that. Just a fun fact, Giddis actually edits the Pulse podcast, and I love the way that he edits it and puts all the music in and everything. And I would love to have that on my podcast, but it's not always necessary, right? I'm doing daily drops on my own podcast this month, an episode a day for the whole month of September. And I'm just editing them into script. There's no music, there's no intro, there's no outro. It's just me talking. So you don't really need a lot of tech skill. You do need a good mic. This is the one, I'll put it in the group out. I meant to grab the box out, but the Samsung, whatever one that's about $100 was the one that was recommended to me by a podcast coach when I started. But you need a good mic and a good set of headphones and some sort of a way, like I put mine through to script for the studio sound still. But you need a lot less equipment than you think you need. I made the decision for mine to not be on video unless I have a guest, just because I don't want to be bothered with it. I have no problem being on video, but I just don't want to have to all the time do my hair and do my makeup and all of those things and make it a thing. Maybe at some point I will. I really like to be up at 4:30 in the morning and in front of the microphone if the mood hits me, and I can crank out 3, 4, 5 episodes, no problem like that. So you get to decide, right? And you can also pull, like my YouTube pulls from Captivate automatically. So you pull the audiogram so that you still have a presence on YouTube. I know that's not a great way because if you're a video person, you're on YouTube to watch videos, but I'm not a video person. I wouldn't watch a video to save my life usually. So, so some of the things that you want to think about if you're thinking about starting a podcast are the cadence of your episodes. How often are you going to publish an episode? Popular opinion, and I know we're in the human design space, so we don't always do what's popular, but weekly episodes are a really good idea, at least because you want to be able to insert yourself into people's routines. So you think about, I also really like, especially for people who, might have an undefined throat, might be non-sacral. I like mini series. So you think about when in my part of the world, when Yellowstone comes out, or I don't know, Virgin River or something like that, we're binging all the episodes, right? So you can totally do that. You don't need to say, I'm going to have a podcast. I'm going to, go into this podcasting thing and I'm going to have a podcast a week for the next 6 years. You don't have to do that. You can do, I'm working with a microdosing queen right now, microdosing co-pilot right now. And she has recorded, she's a Manny Jen. She's recorded, I think, 4 little mini series that will take her through all of 2025. So that's how she's chosen to do it. It can be like 7 to 10 episodes. When you have the energy for it, that's when you do it and you get it out there. It can be little topic pockets if you have different topics that you cover in your business, but you really want to set your cadence. Because, back in the day, we don't do this now, but back in the day, like my show was Friends. And I knew on Thursday nights, I was going to be on my couch with a package of Junior Mints watching Friends. And like, that was my routine. So you want to be that for somebody, right? You want to know that on Monday mornings, they're going to be listening to Amy. And on Wednesday mornings, they're going to be listening to Darcy, because they're going to have something in their life that they do while they listen to your podcast. Maybe it's while they're cooking dinner, maybe it's while they're walking their dog, but they are doing something if your podcast is part of their life. And if you're not doing it on a regular cadence, you kind of miss that unless you do that mini series kind of launch. Another thing that you're going to want to decide is the length of each show, because then it's a lot easier to kind of give yourself a bit of a framework as you go along and to come up with topic ideas and to keep it in this container, and whether you want guests or not. So I started out doing a mix on my own podcast. I started out doing a mix of guest episodes and solo episodes. And I just checked, I've been almost a year now and just checked my stats, and my solo episodes are way better than my guest episodes. And I think part of the reason is that the guest episodes are longer. And my people, again, like 15, 20 minutes is what we're usually looking at. Okay, so we did consistency, video, guests, hiring editor on Fiverr, yes. Okay, so Amy is asking, the intro outro stressed me out. Another question, can you have the same ad for your thing running, or do you have to do a new one for each episode? You can pre-record your ads and you can pop them in your player if you're doing it yourself. You can also, in Captivate anyway, you can also change your ads at any time. So say that, like, you know, people are going to go back and binge your stuff, right? So say that you did an episode 20 episodes ago and it's got an old call to action, you can put a new commercial in it to make it a little bit more updated if you want. And then Adam Shively would tell you that even though this is really, really painful, especially for a manifesting generator, he wants you to, he recommends that you put the same call to action for 12 weeks. I've not yet been able to do that. But that's his big recommendation is, yeah, I know, Amy, you're like, how am I gonna do that? Yeah.
I'm not even an MG and I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it, like, if I do a promo thing for an ad, I can replace that later.
Yeah.
Only in Captivate, or like,
Just check the other podcast players. I would assume that they all work the same, that you can pop different little commercials in, different outros and intros and outros. And for your intro and outro, if you're having music, you want to buy the rights to the music. I can't remember what the thing is, but there, if you Google it, I'm sure you'll come up with the different ways that you can buy the rights to us, like $20 or something, but then you have the rights to use that music if you want music.
thank you.
Could I repurpose TikToks as a podcast? I don't know. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know. It's like short, aren't they? Like super short?
Well, like, I can do 10 minutes, and I think there's some capability, like, you can upload longer things if you record it outside of TikTok. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do, in my mind, I make one recording, I can chop it up, I can descript it and make it a blog post or multiple. Like, I want to then shotgun, it's a shotgun that sprinkles. I want to do that and put it everywhere.
Yeah.
But make one thing.
Yeah. There's a girl, I will try to find who she is on Instagram. It's Jamie something. That's really helpful on Instagram, I know. But she does her she records her podcast live from Instagram, and she streams to her, she is doing it live on Instagram and streaming to her podcast player at the same time. And you can very much tell, like, so for someone, like, acoustics really matter to me. And it drives me crazy to listen to something where there's like in the background, or, you know, my husband drives my car, I don't know why, and puts the AM radio on, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting on my last nerve. So I, as a podcast listener, I would not listen to something that was somebody back and forth with their audience on Instagram, but that's me. So you get to define who your listener is, right? I want to know that I'm listening to a podcast. And I think that, yeah. Anyway, I think there's a lot of podcast listeners who are like, yeah, I want it to be a podcast episode, because we listen because we don't like all of that other stuff that comes with video, if that makes sense. Yeah. And the thing that was what I was going to say when I decided to start a podcast is, because search is going to audio. So I was at that mastermind last year, and they were talking podcasting. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm starting a podcast, and just went with it. And it does become that thing that you can pull everything out of very, very quickly, or someone else can pull it out of for you as well. Joni is saying in the chat that her husband can create custom music. So if that's on your list, you might want to hit up Joni M is on here for that. Okay, so I wrote down, I'm just going to take a breather here. Does anybody have something that's coming up before we talk about launching a podcast? Okay, we're talking about launching a podcast. All right, so when you were thinking about the title for your podcast, really try to get some SEO in there. Try to make it clear over clever. So on mine, yes, I have the word unjaded. It meant something. Like I had a store for 15 years that I hated the name of. And I was like, nobody's ever going to carry swag with this. And I wanted something that was swag worthy. So I launched my podcast with swag and people being involved in and all that stuff. And I wanted something swag worthy. So the unjaded was something, but then human design for intentional entrepreneurs. The pulse is the pulse on human design. Like so you really want your keywords in there. You really want it to be clear. Like Darcy, what did you say again? You had a long name. Can you say that again?
So the actual name would be The Quest to Unbecoming. And then the tagline would be Rising from the Ashes of Codependency with Human Design. At least that's what I think.
Yeah. And what would the person who walked you through content say to all of that?
I don't know.
So I think that it needs to be something as simple as codependency meets human design, or drop codependency through your human design. Like it needs to be super, super clear. And then you can put all that flowery stuff in later. You can put that in the description. But so when we look at our podcast player, like you have your phone, right? And your podcast thing is like this big, right? The little wee tiny square on your phone. And if someone can't see at a glance what exactly your show is about, they're going to just keep scrolling. Like search human design right now or search codependency and just notice what pictures or what covers make you stop and want to listen and what make you just keep passing on. So that's something really to consider. Make the letters really big enough that people can see it at a glance on that little tiny phone screen when they're trying to pick you over someone else or when you want them to pick you over someone else. And then you can keyword stuff. So you put your title in on your player, not on your artwork, but on your player, you can keyword stuff after the main name because nobody's going to see that part. So you can put in God knows how many words after that where people don't see it. And then in your description, think about what would people Google to find this? And that's the questions that you can actually put it in question format there. Of what people would Google to find that podcast, because that's exactly how they're going to find it, right? What is codependency? What is human design? Like all of those types of questions you want to have in there, along with the pretty language that you said as well. Yeah, Marla says we can always start simple and fancy things later. Amen to that. Done is better than perfect, right? I was listening to a book on Audible this morning, and one of the things she said was an old Irish proverb, pray for potatoes with a hoe in your hand. And I was like, oh, I like that, right? Okay, so really have a clear name for your podcast. Think of SEO, think of keywords, think of being really easy to find, no matter what player, no matter if you do it on IG Live or however you do your podcast, try to think about those things. And then launching. So I think launches are super, super fun. I get really excited whenever I get to change something in my business. I want to do it as a launch because it's so fun, but not everybody feels that way. So I think a lot of times what people do is they start a podcast and they just put it on the airwaves, and that's all that ever happens with it. And then they get really discouraged because nobody's paying attention to their podcast, but they're not really paying attention to their podcast. So you really have to get the word out more than you think you have to get the word out. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. You're the boss, right? But if you want your podcast to be successful and to not have pod fade, which is when podcasts, like I think it's only 10% of podcasts ever go beyond 20 episodes. And you want to be in that 20 plus episode mark, right? You don't want to just fall off with your podcast. You've put a lot of work into it. So launching can be fun, like to bring people with you on the journey. I'm going to tell you how I've launched the 2 podcasts that I've launched. Both of them launched in the top 100. The Pulse launched in quite a few countries in the top 100. So it's worth doing really well, in my opinion. So one of the things that you can do is you can have a few episodes for people to binge on day 1. So if you're starting to think about a podcast now, get yourself ready with a few episodes rather than just one episode. You can do a trailer. Giddis did that for our podcast. He did a little trailer that was like 3 minutes long that told people what the podcast was about, and it was already on there. When you have your podcast player and you push, it pushes out to all of the, I don't even know what you call them, but like Apple, Spotify, all those, Apple's going to take longer to approve you. So try not to leave it to the last minute when you're like launching your podcast and then you realize, oh my gosh, I haven't been approved for Apple. So they're going to take a little bit longer than the other players. It will happen automatically, but it is going to take a few days. So launch with a few episodes. Really try to think about who is the podcast for and what kind of information are you going to cover so that people know whether it's for them or not. Because if it's not for them, you don't need to have them listening, right? Or downloading or whatever. And then how can you make it fun? How can you bring people on the journey with you? Like you saw what we did with the hype team. I did that for my own podcast too. I had a hype team. If you are able to, and you can do some swag, like I did mugs for mine and mailed them out, which mugs are terrible to mail and expensive to mail in Canada. But they worked really well because people could story them. So how can you get people talking about your podcast as you're getting ready to launch it? By putting things on their story and tagging you. So that's user generated content for you. And you just keep resharing all of those things that people are sharing about you. And Lara did that on our podcast. So that's a really good way to launch, is just to bring people in on the journey with you and show them, like I always say, right? Behind the scenes, B-roll, polls, bring them along, ask them things, would you rather this or this? Just get them involved in the process. And then on day 1, so it's a numbers game. Just like a New York Times bestseller, all of the copies of the books have to go through, to be counted, have to go through one counter. So I could order 1,000 books, but if I don't order them through that one counting system, they don't count towards that author's best-selling thing. It's the same thing on podcasts. Apple Podcast is the counter on day 1. So you want as many people listening as possible in your home country on day 1. So how can you do that? In my world, like everyone in my audience knew that today was the day and they were binging all of those episodes. My husband's on a ladder. He's got an iPad playing and a phone playing. And I'm like, what do you mean you only listen to 3 episodes? Get listening to the rest of them. So like everybody that can possibly listen, Victoria picked up the slack for us in the UK and pushed us up on the charts when ours was launching. I'm like, who do we know in the UK? Because we were like not doing as great there. But it's just a numbers game. So it's fun to be able to say, I launched in the top 100. It doesn't really mean anything, but it's super, super fun. And you can do it too. Like you can totally do it. You can totally climb the charts. You just have everybody listening on day 1 and you have enough episodes that they can binge that you just keep getting pushed out. And then Chartable is a free, I'll put this in the chat, sorry. I feel like I'm like fire hosing. Chartable, if I can spell and talk. It's a free, like it counts, it ranks. It's a free ranking system that shows you where your podcast ranks. And there are now over 5 million podcasts in the world. So if you get on that list at all, even if you get on that list at number 4 million, that's still a pretty big deal. But if you get on that list at all, you will. If you last longer than 20 episodes, you will get on that list. Like mine is always in the low thousands, like 7,000 or something at the most, like at the highest number for entrepreneurship and business. I'm a little wee podcast out of middle of nowhere in Canada. So it's just holding on. Somebody asked my husband that. Our son got married on the weekend, and somebody said, "Oh my God, you guys have been married 32 years. What's your secret?" And Pete said, "Just hold on, buddy." And it's the same thing with your podcast. Just hold on. Just keep going, and you'll knock it out of the park. You'll be in the top 10% if you just keep doing the episodes, just keep doing the work. And if you're not embarrassed by the first episodes that you did, by about 20 episodes in, then you didn't put it all on the line. Like I am mortified when people go back and listen to the first episodes of my podcast. Absolutely mortified. And you will be too. So just know, like Marla said, you can start simple and do fancy later. You're not going to love the first episodes that you do. You're going to think maybe that you love them, but you're not going to love them when you get down the road. And that's okay, because you're going to grow all the way along, and your listeners are going to grow, and your niche is going to get tighter. You're going to find that you end up, streamlining what you're talking about, and you get feedback from your listeners, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. And what does Kate Northrup say? The better it gets, the better it gets. There was one more thing that was in my head a second ago about this. Oh, be in a soft room. That was something that I had no idea that I had to be. And I ended up for my second episode recording it in a blanket fort at my cottage, because the cottage is all hardwood and we couldn't get good sound, and I didn't have Descript then. So be in a soft room. And soft room, you can put like heavier drapes or towels even on your windows, pillows around your computer, but something to soak up the sound. Carpeted room, lots of furniture, exactly the opposite of my house. Or just use Descript and you can change the sound, but a soft room is good anyway. Okay, I'm going to take a breath and read the last bit of the chat. Is anything coming up for anyone around this, or is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about? Stacy, that is a perfect niche for a podcast. So Stacy is saying she'd love to have one on chronic illness and pancreatitis and how human design has helped me heal on an energetic level, and interviewing others about their health stories. Like that's totally a niche, because you want people to know, is this for me? Like it should be really, really evident whether your podcast is for them or not when they look at the title. How many episodes did you launch with? If you could change anything, what would you do differently? Ooh, I launched with 7 episodes. If I could change anything, I would have done more episodes faster. Like I'm loving this daily episode thing. So I think that I would have gone to twice a week, probably sooner. I think that's probably where I'll end up. Again, like Amy, like you were saying in the beginning about like the consistency thing, and what if I'm not consistent? I'm kind of like, oh, what if I don't want to keep up to the daily episodes after that? I also really like adding mini series in. So I did a mini series in the podcasting world. I keep hearing that downloads go down at Christmas time. Don't put much content out at Christmas time. I did a mini series on there's 13 people, there were 12 at that time, but 13 people in my family. And I did an overview of each person's design, because we are, there's 3 generators now and the rest of us are mani-gens. But just because it drives me crazy how people say, oh, you're a manifesting generator, so, or you're a projector. So it's like, there's so many different nuances. And that was really high listenership for me. And then in July, you'll be told that in the summer, downloads go down. So don't worry about, pumping out a lot of content. Lorianne, who was the speaking coach who spoke on last week's episode of The Pulse, she and I both had our highest numbers in July, highest downloads ever. So I think the moral of the story is, don't listen to what they tell you, because who are they anyway, right? And if you're doing good work in the world and you're doing the homework and getting your podcast out, I think that's also a thing. Like maybe downloads go down because people don't bother with their businesses in the summer, because people think they're going to take a break and they're not putting it out as much either, right? Yeah, so hopefully Stacy that. Oh, and I said I launched with 7 episodes, right? I would maybe launch with more episodes now, knowing what I know now. I don't listen to podcasts. I never did either before I had one. I was like, what is the point of this? Yeah. Because I discovered why I don't listen to podcasts though, or didn't, because when I first started listening a few years back, I would listen to people who had guests on, and the guests would like take over the show, and it drove me crazy. I'm like, I want to listen to the person that I'm signing on to listen to. So I never bothered, but now I do listen to them. So yes, a listen counts differently than a download. And so you can follow a podcast, or you can download the episodes, or you can just listen. And they're all counted differently, and that's all in Chartable, and in your player, you'll see that you can get all of these analytics. And you can also get, I think it's more on Apple though, but you can get the playthrough rate. So say that you decide to have a 25-minute podcast and you notice that everybody's falling off at 15 minutes, that's good information for you. Because you want to know how long, how much are people, and if you get more than 100%, that means that's an episode that they're listening to over and over again. And that's really good information, because that tells you need to crank out more content like that when you hit on something like that. I can see the wheels, wheels turning. Alicia's just like, okay, no more. Oh, thank you, Darcy. Darcy saying she downloaded a ton of my podcast episodes in July. Well, there you go. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah. Anything else? There was something else that came through my mind, but it went right through, and now it's gone. So there's something. Yeah, Amy, go ahead.
So I don't have an Apple device. I'm a Samsung person. And I like panicked and didn't even realize podcasts were in Spotify. So that's why I listen to it in Audible, because I'm always listening to stuff in Audible.
Yeah.
But my question is do you have to do anything different from, well, you know how like every social media outlet is different? Like, is there any nuance to the receiving end? Like you're saying, listen, a download and whatever. I assume that's Apple,
No,
but
everywhere.
like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I was just curious if there were different things for different outlets.
Nope, you'll just trust your player, like where you upload the audio in your show notes. You'll just set that up that it just gets your podcast to all, like you can choose which players you want it to go to, but you'll definitely choose the big ones. And then you can choose, there's no extra cost to send it to more players. It just goes through. And you set up the time, like mine is set for an average time, 4:15 a.m. or something. And so that if I don't set a time, it just goes out at that time on Mondays.
All right. Thank you.
And you're welcome. You can use your podcast for launches and things too. Like last time I launched my Content by Design course, I launched it entirely on the podcast. I did a workshop week on the podcast, created a workbook, was how I got them on my email list, and launched straight up through the podcast. That's the only thing I did, because I did not have it in me. The story I told myself was that I didn't have it in me to do a launch at that time. And I just wanted to play with this and experiment with like, how good could this podcast really be? And it worked. I sold 10 seats in Content by Design. So it worked. And that was enough for me at that time. I feel like I've just been like talking and talking and talking and talking, because I have. Does anybody else have anything before we? Oh, Lara's here. I didn't see Lara before. Hi, Lara. Any other questions or any experiences to share about podcasting? What about guesting? Does anyone have guesting on podcasts as part of their strategy? Marla?
Sorry, just checking my audio setup. New computer. You saw my head bobbing, my manifesting generator head bob in response to you. So what I have done in the past, and I'm actually just in the process of starting this over or starting it up again, is I did this because of a Facebook group that I run with a colleague of mine. I did Facebook Lives at the time of, and I would choose a topic. So for example, and I would have like a panel interview. So I would have, if we did type, I would have 3 manifestors on. And then, you know, I did generators. I had 3 generators on, and I asked a series of questions. And what was, and then I did that through the lines, the profile lines. I had some conscious, some unconscious of the same line on, and so on. So I've just had the business on pause for personal reasons, and I'm back at it. So now I've done a series of the authorities, and now I'm back continuing and finishing and wrapping that up. And then what I did was I had somebody edit and just snip off pieces of it and put it up on YouTube. And so some of those are a couple of years old, but I still get views and comments and people commenting. And what I really liked about that was it took the pressure off of me to come up with all the answers, because even though I've studied human design and trained in human design, I have open head and ajna. And in the moment, I'll remember stuff and I'll think of stuff to say, but I just feel like it's so much pressure to be like, I have to sit there and talk about, you know, something. And whereas when I can have a panel of guests who can actually talk from their personal experience of what it's like to be aligned to, of what it's like to have sacral authority, you know, and how it shows up for them, or how their sacral actually feels in their body, it gives so much context to somebody listening to be able to be like, oh, and it's not just me regurgitating information simply because I don't have that particular line in my design or that kind of thing. So it really adds a lot of depth. I think guesting is a great thing.
And you could do so much with those recordings. Like that could even be a mini course or library and a membership. Like there's so much you could do with that content.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will answer that question, Amy, in a second. And how about guesting on other people's podcasts? Does anybody do that? Yeah, that's a really good strategy. When I was at, so there is Podfest is another resource for you. It's a conference and they have them, oh my gosh, Orlando. I went last year, I'm going again this year, but they have them in some other cities as well. And they probably have some online calls and things as well that you can take advantage of if you want to. But why was I saying that? Speaking about open head and ajna. Oh my God, completely gone. Oh, guesting. There was someone who gave a workshop there, and his strategy is guest. He doesn't want to have his own podcast, but he loves podcasts. So he guests on other people's podcasts, and he does over 100 podcast guest episodes a year. So that can be a really good strategy too, especially if you're not sure if you want to have your own yet, but be a good guest. So when you're a guest on someone's podcast, do your part and get the word out. Do your part and share it on your socials and all those things. Because I can't tell you the number of guests that I have had in, and they do nothing. And it is so frustrating when you have given someone airtime and done all of the legwork and they're on your website and everything, and they're just like, okay, thank you. Don't do that. Like, be a good guest. But that can be a good part of your strategy, and it can also be a part of your strategy to grow your podcast. To be on other people's podcasts can be a really good thing. Oh, good. Somebody's saying that being a guest on a podcast was an incredible experience. That's good. Okay, weird question. Some of you look like your video here on Zoom is better. Are you using something fancy? Oh, you're getting called out. Marla and Joel. I never say your name right. I'm sorry. It shouldn't be that hard. What kind of webcam are you using?
I'm using my iPhone, so it connects with the Zoom, so the quality is pretty good. And then you have some new options on Zoom that you can activate that pops out the camera with a better quality. So your phone, if it's an iPhone or a Samsung, but in my case, it's an ecosystem. So MacBook Pro and the camera, they connect, so I don't have to do anything, and it's very easy. And even for podcasting, it records really well if you want to do it. And yeah, it's the phone, because if I turn it off, it's very low quality. So it's a big difference.
Wait, if you turn off which thing?
The MacBook Pro, it was the
Oh,
one before. This one
Okay.
is the one from the phone. So I'd rather have this one on,
Yeah, I'm on
unless,
my computer, and obviously I have a big window next to me, so that's garbage. But
yeah.
you just look so you and Marlo look so crisp, but you also have virtual background, so I didn't know if that did something.
Mine is not virtual.
Oh,
Mine's real.
just blurred.
Yeah. I don't use virtual because I read a couple of books on that, and that makes people lose trust on the person itself. So I don't use virtual things so at all. And they are all FBI agents, so I trust them on that part. and I stopped using them. But I just have something that's the studio light is off now. And if I do the portraits, so there are a lot of options on Zoom now that really help you with that.
Thank you. What about you, Marla? What are you using?
She typed it in there.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Sorry.
you for typing it.
I'm also in Canada, so I just looked up the camera that I have. I have a little Logitech thing on a. I actually just bought a new stand for it, like just a little table stand for the camera is like this big, like it's tiny, and it's about $90 on Amazon.ca. And so it's not too expensive. I used to use I just moved to a desktop, and I used to use my laptop, and I used to use the camera, but then the camera started, it just looked a little foggy, like it wasn't very good quality as video improved over time. So I got this little guy, and it's a 1080p. And that I have lighting from outside. I have a window right here. I don't have fully balanced light, but I have a light on this side. So I kind of have lighting on one side and lighting on the other. I just have to watch not to have, I had a ring light in front of me, but my glasses reflect it. So that's one thing. But if you don't wear glasses, then you can have lighting in front of you. But yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not expensive. I'm using the camera, the mic right now from the camera. I have a set of wired headphones that I offer better audio quality, but as Vicky said, you can probably clean it up into script. And I have an old Yeti microphone, which sometimes chooses when it likes to work, but when I can use it, it does provide very good audio quality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Something else. A pop filter. I really needed a pop filter. If you listen to my very first episodes, yeah, I really should have had a. So there's Stacy. There's what's one other thing I would have done differently. I would have gotten a pop filter because I have a really I enunciate very well for some reason when I'm speaking on a podcast. I don't know. It's like when you're speaking to someone who can't hear well, you think that you need to and make your words really slow, and I do that, I think, on my podcast sometimes. So oh, I thought Amy was frozen. Okay, so we are a little bit past time here. Thank you for being here. Is there anything else before we finish up that somebody? Oh, Simona, yeah, you're still here. It's like it was 11 o'clock now.
Yeah, it is. But it's very interesting. I wanted to stay and watch it all through. So I just want to add up another idea. I don't know, it's just like ideas popping out in my head about the expanding client circle. I thought to myself that it would be nice to collaborate with an influencer and like do a chart reading or maybe even a podcast, like them recommending to their audience about, oh, they listened to a great podcast, there was such information I can relate or something, because that's a new audience, and they are all very involved in their influencer's life, and whatever the influencer is like something new, they are all, oh, we're gonna go check it. Because I do that myself. So I mean, even as Marla said about the guests in the podcast, like invite an influencer would like also announce that they will be in this kind of podcast and get, you know, information, and their audience would come too, you know, and it would be an expansion, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you. Anybody else? All good. Looks like it's bedtime for some people. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you for being here. So I'll send this through to Gittes tonight, and it'll probably be a couple days before it's on YouTube, okay? But it will be there for you. And also, like, share your podcasts. Share what you're working on in the Facebook group. We want to hear from you, what you're working on, what stage of the game you're at. We'll all listen on day one to push you up on the charts, all of us. All right. Thanks for being here, you guys. Good night.